I'm Nima Rajan, and welcome to Northwest Newsweek Year in a Review, our third and final episode recapping the big newsmakers of 2018. We start in September when Ontario Provincial Police announced their investigation into the suspicious death of a Dryden man earlier this year. On August 8th, the OPP requested the public's assistance to find Henry Stone Arnold after his vehicle was located a kilometer west of Dryden near Highway 594. 9 days later, human remains were located, and on August 23rd, they were positively identified as those of the missing man. Constable Patrina Taylor Hertz wouldn't say whether it's a homicide or not, but police are continuing to ask the public for assistance.
The investigation is still actively being worked on. There still is a police presence in the area, and there will be until the investigation is concluded. It's being investigated by our Northwest Region Crime Unit under the direction of Detective Inspector Randy Haida of the Criminal Investigations Branch. I don't believe there's any concern for public safety at this time.
Since this story initially aired, there has been no further information released regarding the investigation. However, the OPP have set up a dedicated tip line for the Arnold investigation. Construction on a brand new bridge which will span the Rainy River connecting Baudette, Minnesota and Rainy River, Ontario continues. It's a $39 million binational project, and it's one of the biggest infrastructure projects seen in the Rainy River area in years, which is aimed at improving safety and the economies of the two border communities. Adam Riley reports.
Construction is in full swing as the foundations on both sides of the border are being built. MP Don Rusnak says the bridge is a critical piece of infrastructure as it's one of the only 3 border crossings in the region.
Being in the Northwest, we're often isolated from other communities, and having this crossing is vitally important both for the economy, tourism, and the people of the district.
Rainy River's Mayor Deborah Ewald agrees with Rusnak as the new bridge will lead to an increase in traffic in her community, resulting in a potential economic boost.
Right now, the bulk of people come through in this area through Fort Frances International Falls. There are huge lineups there in the summertime on the weekends and stuff. So we're hoping that we can alleviate some of that.
Ewald says with the construction, there's been an economic impact on Rainy River as hotels and restaurants in her community are being occupied by the crews. She adds the bridge, which is almost 60 years old now, was built in a different era and has a limited type of traffic that can cross the bridge unimpeded.
Part of the problem with the existing bridge is not just its age, but also the fact that it's got a cover on. It's like a covered bridge, sort of, and it limits height restrictions big time.
The project is funded by both the Canadian and American governments and has crews working in tandem on both sides of the border. However, it was the Americans who initiated the need for this project after a tragedy in Minneapolis just over 10 years ago. On August 1st, 2007, the I-35 bridge collapsed during rush hour, killing 13 people and injuring over 100 others. The cause was determined to be an error by the bridge designers. The state did an assessment of its bridge infrastructure and identified the Baudette-Rainy River crossing as a priority. Rusnak says $13 million of the $39 million price tag is coming from the federal government, and the bridge is expected to be completed in 2020. Adam Riley, TBT News.
October saw a serious incident at the district jail in Kenora, where several prisoners managed to take a corrections officer hostage. On September 9th, police were called to the jail after an officer, John Santoris, was surrounded, handcuffed to a bed, and assaulted for 2 hours before being released and taken to hospital for assessment. It was an incident which gave flashbacks to many in the corrections ministry, including union president at the Thunder Bay Correctional Center, Sean Bradshaw. He called for major changes as the incident occurred just 3 years after a riot hostage taking at the Thunder Bay jail.
I think it highlights some of the major issues that are facing corrections right now. Currently the jail is, I believe, running around 125% capacity, so they're over capacity. Kenora jail is running nearly 200% capacity, and it becomes a powder keg. So they're got a lot of guys sitting on long-term remands, and we can't relieve those pressures. So it becomes very dangerous.
A month after the incident, charges were finally laid against 7 inmates ranging in age from 19 to 35. Those charges include hostage taking, 12 counts of assaulting a peace officer, disarming a peace officer, unauthorized possession of a weapon, and uttering threats. In late September, a cloud of sadness and loss hung over the town of Schreiber. Flags at Schreiber's town hall and around the community were at half-mast to honor the passing of longtime Schreiber politician Bob Kraus, who lost a lengthy battle with cancer at the age of 83. Kraus spent over a quarter of a century in Schreiber's politics, first as a councillor for 14 years before taking the helm as mayor for another 12. Friend and colleague Mayor Mark Figlomini says he was shaken when he received the word of Kraus's passing, calling him his special mentor.
He was everything in Northwestern Ontario politics, and in Schreiber he was just that. He was Mr. Schreiber. He was the mayor of Schreiber for so many years, and I always joked with him as he was always the mayor of Schreiber and will always be the mayor of Schreiber. Me personally, I lost one of my best friends.
Figlomini says one of Kraus's last projects, the town's new water tower, will be named after Bob Kraus. Will be named the Bob Kraus Water Storage in his memory. The end of October saw lots of changes on councils across the entire region as residents cast their ballots for the 2018 municipal election. Adam Riley has this wrap-up of the wins and losses across the Northwest.
In the municipality of Nebing, Erwin Butikoffer won his first term as mayor, and in Comrie, Kevin Holland is back for another term. Moving west to Kenora, Councillor Dan Raynard easily took the mayor's chair in that community. In Fort Frances, June Call defeated Ken Perry by a ratio of almost 2-1. In Dryden, incumbent Mayor Greg Wilson held off a challenge by Roger Valley. Farther north, Fred Moda will now represent Red Lake after defeating 4 other candidates. Doug Lawrence has also won another term as mayor in Sioux Lookout. In Ignace, longtime Mayor Lee Kennard suffered an upset, losing his seat to political newcomer Donald Cunningham. Moving into the east, Gary Nelson was the winner in Red Rock, defending his post from rival Ray Rivard.
We're going to get stuff done this next 4 years, from what I can see right now. The last 4 years, it was a tough time, financially and council-wise, everything. It was a tough 4 years. And I can see good things happening.
Next door in Nipigon, Richard Harvey was once again successful. He says the biggest challenge was to separate his message from those of his 2 competitors, as on many issues, all 3 were in agreement.
To really put forward the message as to why one particular candidate was the appropriate person to be in this position. What did set you apart from the others? And that was, I think, the biggest challenge that we all faced in this particular election.
Meanwhile, in Terrace Bay, Jody Davis was in high spirits as he was able to fend off his competitor, Councillor Gino LeBlanc, to continue his tenure as mayor.
I've been fortunate my 12 previous years of having really good councillors to work with and a good administration, and I look forward to the same sort of teamwork. One of the first things we'll move ahead with early in the new year is the developing a revitalized strategic plan.
The biggest change Monday came in Schreiber, where Councillor Dave Hamilton, now in the position of mayor, is the sole survivor of a complete purge of the council in that community. However, he says he isn't concerned about having a green council.
Well, I think we'll have to take a one-day-at-a-time approach, but the people elected are members of the community, have been for a long time, so I'm sure they know some of our struggles.
In Greenstone, residents were steadfast in their support of Mayor Renal Beaulieu, who defeated challenger Eric Peach. And in the far east of the region, John McEachran reclaimed the job of mayor of Manitowage as incumbent Andy Major dropped to 3rd place. And in White River, Angelo Bazzoni is back for another term. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Stay tuned, we'll have more after the break. The family of former Grassy Narrows chief Stephen Fobister Sr. is requesting an inquest into his death. They believe he lived and died as a result of mercury poisoning and want the provincial and federal governments to admit that that is a fact. Adam Riley reports.
We want the truth.
The friends and family of Stephen Fobister Sr. believe his death earlier this month was a direct result of mercury poisoning, and they want Ontario's chief coroner Dirk Heyer to conduct a public inquiry into his death.
A thorough, transparent investigation must be done to prove once and for all that Steve lived with mercury poisoning and died of mercury poisoning.
The family is also calling on Ontario Health Minister Christine Elliott and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to acknowledge that Fobister's death was caused by mercury poisoning.
Will you respect Steve by speaking the truth and commit to fairly compensate all Grassy Narrows people for ongoing mercury crisis that has been denied and neglected for so long?
Mercury contamination has been a blight on the English Wabigoon River system near Grassy Narrows and Wabisimung First Nation ever since the former paper mill in Dryden released several thousand kilograms of the substance into the river systems during the 1960s. There has been some progress. Last year, Ontario's former Liberal government committed $85 million towards remediation efforts of the river system. The federal government is committing to fund a treatment center in the area for mercury, and the PCs recently announced that payments for mercury disability would be retroactively indexed to the rate of inflation since being frozen in 1985. However, Williamson says it's still not enough.
94% of our Grassy Narrows people get no compensation, even though we have all been hurt. We've all lost loved ones in our way of life.
The family was joined by Kiiwetinoong MPP Saul Mamakwa and Ontario Regional Chief Roseanne Archibald. Mamakwa says on the 2-week anniversary of Fobister's death, he tried to hold the government to account.
In the legislature, I asked the government to admit publicly that Mr. Fobister had died as a result of mercury poisoning. And again, they did not answer.
Instead, Ontario Government House Leader Todd Smith called the mercury contamination in Grassy Narrows a historic tragedy. Adam Riley, TBT News.
It's been a steady trend for communities here in the Northwest in recent years, where banking institutions decide to pull the plug, leaving customers with limited access. Next year, the CIBC plans to close 2 of its branches, one in Long Lac and the other in Terrace Bay, which has residents in both communities wondering what to do next. Once again, Adam Riley reports.
No, they just say that we're a valued customer, and now I'm feeling that we're not.
Mo Stark is the owner of Mo and Joe's Lighthouse Variety in Terrace Bay and a customer of CIBC. The bank informed its employees earlier this week that it would be closing its doors in the community next August. Stark says the closure will definitely have a negative impact.
Well, to be able to go down and get money, do a lot of banking there. I'm not an online person to do online stuff, so I'm going to tell you that I don't trust it.
Terrace Bay Mayor Jody Davis says he's disappointed with how CIBC has handled the closure announcement, especially after speaking with a senior bank official over the phone.
So I asked him, I says, this is quite a shock to the whole community. I says, are you planning having a press release? And his answer was no, period. And so I asked him why. He says, well, word of mouth will get around by people just spreading it and talking about it. This is a multinational bank, and this is the way they handle media. This is terrible.
In addition to the closure in Terrace Bay, Long Lac will also be losing its CIBC come February of 2019. To compensate for the loss, the company says it will provide more convenient hours, 2 full-function instant teller machines with barrier-free access and free parking at its location here on Memorial Avenue, over 2 hours driving distance away from the 2 affected communities. Adam Riley, TBT News.
It was a long time coming, but the Nipigon River Bridge is now complete. After 5 years of construction and a few major setbacks, traffic began rolling across all 4 lanes of Ontario's first cable-stayed bridge in mid-November. Construction began in September 2013, and it was originally supposed to open last year. But a major failure in January of 2016 forced the contractors to make changes, which delayed the completion until now. The unique bridge featured 3 towers with cables supporting the bridge deck and a separate sidewalk for pedestrians. MPP Michael Gravel spearheaded the project when he was a Liberal cabinet minister, and despite all the headaches with it, he's happy to see it complete.
It was certainly a goal to get it done originally by this time last year, but there were obviously some issues with the bridge which had to be dealt with. They have been dealt with in a very positive way, and to know that the bridge is now open for 4 lanes is fabulous news. And being part of a large project that means a great deal to me, and I know it means a great deal to my constituents.
This bridge is, we truly believe, and we see it as being a real attraction. It's going to be a tourist attraction, and having the bridge fully functional is going to be moving it towards that.
The amount of traffic that goes across these bridges, now it'll be able to handle it. I mean, we saw back when the bridge did fail a couple of years ago that it was the economic lifeline across the country.
The original price tag was set at $106 million, but it's now expected to cost a lot more than that. However, Ministry of Transportation officials have not released the updated figure. Just as the Nipigon River Bridge wrapped up construction, another in the western edge of the Northwest is about to begin. Officials with the consulting firm WSP and the Ministry of Transportation were in Kenora to unveil the public highway twinning project from the Manitoba-Ontario border to the western edge of the city. Adam Riley was there and he files this report.
Kenora City Councillor Rory McMillan says he would like to see the process sped up a little, but sees the commitment as a significant step forward.
The city is very anxious to ensure to proceed with the twinning of the highway. It's great for us from a health and safety perspective, also from an economic development perspective to have access to a twin-lane highway for many reasons.
Those reasons include patient transfer between hospitals in Kenora and Winnipeg, as well as not being completely cut off should an accident occur. Consultations on the project initially ran between 2009 and 2011, but then stalled for 7 years before being restarted and finalized within the last few months, and has the project divided into 3 sections. The first consisting of 6.5 kilometers starting at the Manitoba-Ontario border. With the consultations now complete for Section 1, project manager Neil Ahmed says shovels could be in the ground as soon as mid-2019. He adds the section from the border to Highway 673 is a relatively easy stretch and stresses things could get more complicated as construction moves east, closer to Kenora.
That's where we're really going to face more challenge with impact to community and impact to the highway itself. Maybe even some realignment of highway as we move closer to Kenora.
That community includes several residences and businesses in the Clearwater Bay area. At Tuesday's meeting, there was no indication as to what the overall project will cost, but Ahmed says to keep costs low, existing infrastructure will be used as much as possible. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Stay tuned. We'll have more Northwest Newsweek Year in Review after the break. For 18 months, members of council and residents of Dryden anxiously awaited a costing proposal from the Ontario Provincial Police as to how much it would cost to switch from their municipal police force to the OPP. In a public information session in November, it was announced the price tag would be $5.4 million the first year of a 3-year contract, then fall to $4.7 million per year. That's close to $1 million more than the current budget for the Dryden Police Service. Adam Riley reports.
The price tag for year 1 of a 3-year contract sits at just under $5.5 million, with the remaining 2 years at $4.7 million per year, and is about $1 million more than they currently pay for the Dryden Police Service. Mayor Greg Wilson wonders where the city, with its heavy debt load, is going to find the money to make the switch, and equates the numbers proposed by the OPP as a moving target.
So things will change, numbers will change over time, and by the end of the 3 years, we'll be able to get a really great, accurate idea of what that OPP model shift is going to look like. But the problem is, you need to model what you think is going to happen for the next 3 years.
Wilson adds there will be public consultations in the coming months to discuss the proposal. Included in that initial $5 million fee is the cost to renovate the OPP detachment on Highway 17, as the Dryden Police Headquarters on King Street is located too close to a fuel depot and due to legislation cannot be utilized. Police Board Chair Judy Green says it will take some time to look over the proposal from the board's perspective.
There's a lot, as I said, to go through and digest, and we need to do some more research. And I was grateful to hear some of the suggestions even that the OPP had made, but we're well on our way to doing those investigations as well.
Scott Silver is the president of the Dryden Police Service Association and has patrolled the streets here for 23 years. He says the current police budget sits at $3.9 million, and since the city began looking at the OPP costing, it has lowered morale and created issues within the department.
I'm not going to lie, it has affected their stress and some of their families and things like that. We have very dedicated people that work for us, and we like where we work. We like the citizens, that our friends and family that we get to protect, and we enjoy that.
Silver says there is also concern over job losses, as there is no guarantee that Dryden police officers would be hired by the OPP, and cited OPP takeovers in both Espanola and Midland, where none of the local officers were hired. The city now has 6 months to make a final decision as to whether or not to remain with the local force or to go with the OPP. If Dryden does make the switch, it will leave the Thunder Bay Police Service as the last remaining municipal police force here in the Northwest. Adam Riley, TBT News.
A historic way to end 2018 in Pikangikum First Nation, as the community switched off its diesel generators for the last time and connected to Ontario's power grid. It marked the completion of a phase of a $1.6 billion project. Adam Riley was there and files this report.
The generator is done for good.
Christmas came early for residents of Pikangikum First Nation, as the community officially became powered by the provincial grid and entered a new chapter. A new chapter which, according to Chief Dean Owen, where it has a reliable power source and is able to stop rationing its electricity and end its moratorium on development.
I'm very excited, and I'm confident to say that this is a turning point for us in terms of the long waiting list of infrastructure that could have been here 10 years ago.
The switch will also have an enormous environmental impact. Owen says over the last 2 years, the community has burned 12 to 15,000 liters of diesel fuel a day running the generators. The 117-kilometer-long transmission line from Red Lake was built over the past 13 months at a cost of $60 million. Watayna Kiniap Power CEO Margaret Kinequinash says the Pikangikum line is just the beginning.
This is kind of like an intro line into Poplar Hill, North Spirit, and all the way up to Sandy Lake, Keewaywin, Deer Lake, the KO communities. And Sandy Lake is the furthest community to be hooked up from this line that we built. So this is a significant progress for those communities.
Kinequinash says another line from Pickle Lake is expected to start construction in 2019. Also on hand for the ceremony was Kenora MP Bob Nault and Kiiwetinoong MPP Saul Mamakwa. Nault says it was a day you wouldn't want to miss, no matter who you are.
This is a game changer. This is a new era.
You can frame it in any way you want, but it is going to make a huge difference to the growth of the community and the opportunities that they'll have.
A parent, a young mother, messaged me and said, you know what, I'll be able to have Christmas lights in my house this year, which they haven't done for years.
Pikangikum is just the first step in this massive project, as over the next few years, more and more communities will become connected to the provincial grid. And the benefits to that don't just stop there. Over time, those communities will then be able to start their own power generation projects and feed into the grid, thus creating more economic opportunity for the communities here in the north. Adam Riley, TBT News.
And that's how the Northwest fared during 2018. What does 2019 have in store? Well, you'll have to tune into our new episode starting next week to find out. I'm Nima Rajan, and thank you for watching. Have a happy new year.